Welcome to the Academic Writing Amplified podcast. On this podcast, we believe that the culture of academia needs to change radically. Women and non-binary people are revolutionizing academia within institutions that were not built for us. If you're ready to reject the culture of overwork, kick guilt and overwhelm to the curb, and amplify your voice to make a real impact on your field without breaking down or burning out, you're in the right place. With our team of experienced writing coaches as co-hosts, we'll share insights and talk to inspiring guests to bring you the practical strategies, systems, and mindset shifts you need to find time to write, publish work you love, and design your career on your terms. And it all starts with writing. Let's go. Hello, and welcome back to Academic Writing Amplified. I'm your host, Kathy Mazak. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today is the start of a little series that I've been cooking up about leadership. And we're starting today talking about why becoming a manager in academia is inevitable. Oh my gosh, some of you are freaking out and you're like, no, but I really don't want to be a manager. That's not what I signed up for. But I hope that by the end of today's podcast, you will realize that actually that is what you signed up for, that you know you're successful if you are managing other people. You are now in a position where you're managing other people. And the reason that I want to talk about this is because I think a lot about kind of the trajectory of the professorial life over the whole course of the career. And I just have such a great benefit that I get to see people at lots of different stages of their career, lots of different types of careers, lots of different types of institutions and fields with the clients that I work with. And so I have been developing this picture of the trajectory of the academic career. Now, I do have a previous podcast series that I call the real stages of the academic career. So this is kind of like my next evolved thinking around this idea of stages. I'm not going to get into the real stages. You can please go back and listen to that podcast series. You can scroll back in the feed and find it. But what I really want to talk about today is this idea that we are, in our careers, we are barreling towards more and more leadership requirements. And leadership requirements include the ability to manage others. This is, like I said, like for many people, you did not get into academia because you wanted to manage people. In fact, maybe you got into academia because you didn't want to manage people because you were like, well, this job doesn't have any management in it. But I'm sorry, it does. So let me explain myself. As you move through the academic career, as you develop your research trajectory, as you yourself develop as a scholar, a teacher, a mentor, maybe even sometimes a coach, you are going to be working with other people. This is an inevitability. There is a stereotype that is completely wrong of the lone scholar, right? The lone wolf scholar in the tweed jacket with the elbow patches, toiling away late at night alone. But this is not how scholarship is done, especially today. Like modern scholarship is very interdisciplinary. It so often relies on co-authorship and writing together. Depending on your field, it might rely on big data sets. It might rely on complex, long-term research projects that are developed and take place inside of labs. And all of this leads to you as the scholar managing other people. Because as you continue along your trajectory, you are building a team around you. And you might not think of it as explicitly doing that. You might not think of like, oh, well, here I am today. I'm going to hire an assistant and then I'm going to hire a project manager. Sometimes you are thinking that, especially those of you building research centers and labs or running big grant projects. That might indeed be what you're doing. But even if you're not doing that, you are attracting people to you and you are managing teams. As you mentor graduate students, as you attract graduates to you, recruit maybe graduate students to work with you, those students are becoming essentially members of your team. Now, that is whether you are directly paying them through grant funds or other funds, some kind of funding like you have access to, like, for example, you're a professor of a course and you have a TA, like whether that is true or not, you are their leader, and leadership requires management. So let me paint this picture, a little bit further. As you move through your career and you are publishing more and more, you are developing your line of research and you are mentoring others. So in that case, right, students. Now, maybe you're, writing with students, you're mentoring students into writing, you might be co-authoring with students. You're also, the better you get at your job, the more likely you are to be co-authoring with other people, because people are going to see what you're doing and they're going to want to work with you. They're going to be interested in what you're doing. They're going to be like, wow, she or they is really like killing it over there. I want to align with that work. And for others of you, it might be even more deliberate in terms of management and leadership. For many, many people in all kinds of fields, getting grant funding is essential to tenure and promotion. And those grant projects require more than just your own work. They often require that you are working with other, either students or postdocs that you hire, or project managers, lab managers. All kinds of people start to begin to build your research portfolio, right? They start to contribute to your line of research. And that means you have to manage them. Also, as you move through your career and you are becoming more and more of a leader, and I'll just say again, this is inevitable. If you are doing the job correctly, this is what will happen. You will lead. Those of you listening to this podcast, I know you. I know you very well. You are becoming and you are being called. The requirement of your work is more and more leading. And again, I'm going to talk after this next example about how and why leading requires management, becoming a manager. So another thing that often happens is as you progress through your career, in many departments, you will be asked to serve as a department chair. And if not as the department chair, then as the director of undergraduate studies or the director of graduate studies or some other position that is an admin position. Many departments have traditions where they pass those positions around, especially the department chair, right? Like you're kind of expected that once you're tenured, you will serve as department chair for some amount of time. And that means that you are not only, the leader, but you also have to manage people. And it's not a straightforward type of management, especially at the department chair level, because you are simultaneously the supervisor of professors in your department, but also you are their peer. So it's this strange, yes, you kind of have power over them, but not really, because you couldn't actually fire them. And actually, you probably couldn't hire them either. But you do have this kind of supervisory role and definitely a management role. And what I mean by management is that there are things that I'm going to use the department here as an example, but then this also applies to any kind of organization that you are leading inside of academia, which I'll talk about in a second. But for example, if you're a department chair, you have to have the management skills to communicate well with the people in your department. There are things that your department is responsible for doing, and you need to figure out how you are going to wrangle everyone in your department to do those things. That takes management. That's just one example. So let me talk a little bit about organizations built inside of institutions. So like clearly the department is an organization, right? But also when you become a PI on a grant, you are in essence building an organization within your institution. If you work in a research center, maybe you founded a research center, maybe you developed an institute, maybe you direct it. There are lots of organizations within organizations at academic institutions. And those organizations, I find many of you are running them. You are leading those organizations. Where the difficulty comes is two things. If you are in one of those leadership positions, as I mentioned already, and what this podcast is about, is you have to learn how to manage other people. Sometimes they're your students, they might be your co-PIs, your colleagues, whatever, but you are the kind of nucleus, central figure that is holding a group of people together. That's what an organization is. And because you are that, you need to communicate with them. You need to develop systems to get the work done. That is what leadership is. You need to understand your values, your leadership philosophy, so that you can enact what you need to enact for your organization to be successful. And again, maybe your organization might feel like a big word for you and the students who you supervise in terms of like you're their advisor, for example. But it really is like you are really building an organization when you work with all those other people. Then the other part of this, and this is the really crucial part, is that good managers, to be successful at management, you also need to learn how to manage yourself. You need to know how to be a project manager of projects that only you do. You need to know how to manage your time when it's just you, only you, managing your individual calendar. So one of the ways that I like to teach this is through writing and publishing. So you know that I have, if you're new to the podcast, welcome. So maybe you don't know this, but everybody else knows that I have a program called Navigate that is about writing and publishing and is specifically for professors who have a backlog of papers who want to get those papers out and get their publication pipeline flowing. So that is like the problem that professors bring to that program. I've got a backlog of papers and I need to figure out how to get these publications out. But what happens in the program is that you learn to manage yourself. You learn time management. You learn project management. You learn through the academic mission statement, this idea of like, what do I value and how do I align what I'm doing with what I value? And those essential things at the level of the individual professor are self-management. You start to build self-trust by showing up for yourself and your writing. You think critically about the projects you have to do, and you create a relationship between what you have left to do and the time you have to do it, and the way you are able to keep a calendar, right? And show up for yourself, show up for the plans that you make. All of that is self-management. And it is key to being a good manager of others. Unfortunately, not unfortunately, actually, like this is the way the world works. We don't do one thing and then the next. So you don't like finish becoming a great manager of the self and then chronologically take on managing others. That's just like not the way it works, right? Probably right now, you are in the process of trying to be a better manager of yourself, trying to keep dates with your writing, trying to manage your schedule, trying to manage your projects, trying to develop systems to make things easier and decisions less frequent, trying to develop communication skills. All of that you are in the process of doing at the same time you are beginning to or deep into experiencing the demands of having to manage others. And this is something that can happen at any point in your academic career. You might jump right into a tenure-track role, be overwhelmed with new teaching preps, new colleagues, new institution, and you're trying to figure out how to manage yourself, how to get through how to get publications out at the same time you're teaching and all of that. And then very quickly, many of you are tasked with creating a lab or creating a research center, or at least developing a line of research that is going to be the work that you present in your tenure folio, right? Or your tenure dossier. And so even as you are trying to learn self-management, you are often tasked with then managing others simultaneously. It's not, like a linear, I do one and then I do the next one. And part of that is also because that self-management is just an ongoing, I want to say struggle, but I don't want to give it a negative connotation. It's like just ongoing development. As you move through different stages in your career, you're going to figure out how to manage yourself differently. When changes happen in your life and your family, you also have to readjust your approach to self-management. Really, you are always in the process of learning better how to manage yourself. And understanding that maybe right now, much of your tension in the job is that you also have to manage others, and you're either just in denial about it or not seeing your work with co-authors as management. You're not seeing your work with students as management, but it really is. So those project management skills that you develop in Navigate, for example, the time management skills you develop in Navigate are the same skills that are going to help you manage others, just at kind of like a different level, a more complex level. So this is why you are on the path to becoming a manager, kind of whether you like it or not. You are actually let's kind of really shift the perspective here and say, you are on the path to becoming a manager. And that is so wonderful, because the kind of level of work that you want to do, you're going to need some help. The impact that you want to make in the world, you're going to need some help. So learning how to deal with others, write with others, communicate with others, project management with others, create and implement systems with others, all of that is part of it. But it starts with self-management. So all of you who are listening, you're developing into leaders inside of academia. You are also part of leadership is management. And that is a beautiful thing. It means that more and more people are learning from you. They're supporting you in your academic mission and your work in the world. And you are giving back to them by helping them develop. As they work with you, they develop themselves, and they also are developing their own academic mission and their trajectory through the scholarship. So learning how to be a manager, accepting that you have to be a manager is not a bad thing. And it is definitely an inevitable part of the scholarly life and of becoming a leader. So just a quick word about this new leadership series on the podcast. I want to make a really clear distinction between leadership and administration, especially right now, what's happening in universities kind of in our social, cultural, historical moment. Not all administrators are leaders, and not all leaders are administrators. You could be a leader with no administrative position, no title, no extra compensation. You also could be an administrator with a title, with a role, with extra compensation, and not be a real great leader. That's probably not you listening to this podcast, but I bet you can think of somebody who's in that position. So when I talk about leadership in this series, I'm really talking about actual leadership, not an administrative role. So I'm talking about people who are this is the inevitability of the career trajectory. As you move through, you are becoming more and more of a leader. You are attracting more and more people to work with you, and you are building a team around you. And I want you to just think about what that looks like right now. Does that sound exciting and fun to you? Or does it sound like, oh, that sounds horrible? Because all of that stuff is good, self-reflection, and good to be kind of coached about how you feel about the inevitability of leadership and thus management. I see management as part of leadership, not equivalent to. Yeah. So you are a leader, you need management skills. They include time management, project management, people management. But it's not equivalent to leadership. And leadership is certainly not admin. The two often don't go hand in hand. Although for you, my friend, they will. So if you are looking for an admin position as a way to develop your leadership and step into more leadership, that makes total sense to me. But what I'm seeing out there on these academic streets is a lot of people who are working in places where upper admin they're not very good leaders. So we'll be talking about that in this series as well. I hope that you enjoyed this podcast, and I hope it made you think about the ways in which you are learning how to manage yourself and learning how to manage others, and how that is going to create more impactful scholarship for you in your professorial life. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you so much for spending your valuable time supporting yourself and your writing by listening to this episode. If you like what you heard today, the best way to say thank you is to hop on over to Apple iTunes and write an honest review. The more reviews, the more amazing academic women and non-binary people will find this podcast. So go write one now.